Building on the insights of his best-selling book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt has written a brand new devotional to bring renewal to all who want more of Jesus. A great companion devotional, or perfect on its own. Spend time with the one who changed everything. Get your copy of 52 Weeks with Jesus devotional from Touching Lives for $13, or get both books for just $20. Call 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org.
Today on Touching Lives.
If Jesus can take ordinary well water in a heartbeat, change its molecular structure just like that and turn it into wine so wonderful that the best connoisseur in that building of wine said, "This is the best wine I've ever tasted in my life." Then what do you think he can do for you? What problem do you think you've got he can't solve?
Teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need him. This is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
We're in a series that we're calling Supernatural because one of the hallmarks of the life of Jesus is he was a miracle worker. And what's amazing about his life is not just the quality of what he did, it's the quantity of what he did. It was almost a miracle a minute. You go back to the Old Testament, there weren't that many miracles. And for 400 years, a book of the Bible hadn't even been written. No prophet had said anything. And then this 30-year-old man burst on the scene, and it's almost miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. And so I thought it would be a good idea if we studied some of these miracles and just ask a few, I think, very important questions. Why are these miracles in the Bible? Why did Jesus perform miracles? What do they teach us today? And even more importantly, what do they have to do with us in the 21st century? And here's a big one, is Jesus still in the miracle working business? So that's kind of the series that we're doing. Now, even though this miracle appears to be very simple, here's the good news for us. In my opinion, this is probably the most practical miracle that Jesus ever performed. It may be the easiest miracle to make relevant to where you and I are living right now, because Jesus had to perform this miracle for only one reason. There was only one reason Jesus does the miracle. They had run out of wine at a wedding. Now, I'm going to share with you in just a moment why that's such a big deal, but let me just kind of set all this up for you, and then we're going to get into the meat of this message. This wedding is kind of like a picture of my life and your life. You say, what do you mean? Every wedding eventually runs out of wine. There's going to come a time in your life you're going to run on empty. There's going to come a time in your life when you're going to face a problem you can't solve. You're going to be in the middle of a crisis you can't handle. You're going to be in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of. And you're going to be at the end of your rope. And you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know how to handle it. And you may be saying, that's me right now. That's exactly where I am in my life. Well, this is what I want you to take out the door. Here's the good news for you. This is what we're going to learn from this miracle. Our problems are God's possibilities. That's what you're going to see today. You got a problem. Hey, bad news, you got a problem. Good news, your problem is God's possibility, because this miracle, as simple as it seems, gives us one of the most profound lessons on what to do when you're running on empty that you'll find anywhere in the Bible. As a matter of fact, it gives you a formula that never fails. Now, I don't try to hype a lot of my messages, and I'm not trying to hype this one. I just want to kind of give you a little advance warning. This is one of those messages you really need to pay attention to. And this is one of those messages you might want to write some things down in the front of your Bible, or put it on your note app on your iPad or your iPhone or whatever you may be doing. You might want to do that, because I want to tell you, you live long enough, you're going to run on empty. Your wedding is going to run out of wine. You are going to be facing problems you can't solve and crises you can't handle. And when that happens, I just want you to remember a wedding, a woman, water, and wine. And now I want you to notice what Mary does. Very simple, but what she did works every time you are in a crisis. It works every time you're running on empty. It works every time you've got a problem you can't solve. Look what she did. Number one, you turn to Jesus when you have a problem. First thing you do, you turn to Jesus when you have a problem. John 2, verse 1. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." There's no rise in her blood pressure. She's not tearing her hair out. She just turns to Jesus and says, "Son, we got a problem. There's no more wine." Now, I know that may sound simple to a lot of us and elementary, but can I just be honest? What she did is normally what we don't do. Because you know what we normally do when we face a problem we can't handle? We turn to everybody except Jesus. So we call the pastor, or we call the therapist, or we call the doctor, or we call the lawyer, or we call the principal, or we call the psychiatrist, or we call our neighbor, or we call our mom, or our dad, or our husband, or our wife, or whatever. It's just our tendency to turn to everybody else and anybody else before we turn to Jesus. Now, by the way, there's a great lesson here that I want you to learn. God wants to hear about every problem that we have. I want you to listen to that. God wants to hear about every problem that we have. Now, I know what you're sitting there thinking, and I'd be thinking the same thing. Wait a minute. God already knows every problem that I have. I get that. But our God is such a compassionate, sympathetic, sensitive, tender, loving God. Even though he already knows what the problem is, he wants to tell you what that problem is just the same. When you're running on empty, first thing you do, always make this your first call: I'm going to turn to Jesus. Now that leads to the very second step, which is a natural step, which is this. Once you turn to Jesus with the problem, then you talk to Jesus about the problem. You just let him know what's going on. Now listen again exactly what Mary said, verse 3. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Now, this is always, I kind of find this, a little bit funny. Do you think when she said to Jesus, "They have no wine," that Jesus said, "Do tell"? You don't think he knew already they didn't have any wine? Well, of course he did. But somebody's well said, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. And that's exactly what Mary did. She tells Jesus exactly what the problem is. Now, I want to explain to you why on the surface it doesn't seem like a big problem, but it really was a very big problem. Back in Bible days, a wedding was the social event on any Jewish calendar. If you got invited to a wedding, there's one thing you better put down on your calendar. You better put the wedding down on your calendar, because it was basically considered a social felony if you were invited to a wedding and you did not go, because there was not a bigger social event on the Jewish calendar than a wedding. And here's how a wedding would usually go. It usually would begin with a ceremony right before sundown in the synagogue. So you'd have the wedding ceremony, and they would take their vows, and they would get married. Then the entire wedding party, everybody would leave the synagogue. They would, by candlelight, go through the middle of the town, and even people that were not invited to the wedding were expected to come out of their house, and they would wave. They might throw flowers, or they would give congratulations. They would say a prayer, or they would offer a blessing, because it was a big deal. These weddings were very, very big deals. And so then when they would finally get to the home where the wedding reception was going to take place, the couple did not go on a honeymoon. The honeymoon actually kind of came to them, because this wedding reception, are you ready for this? It lasted several days. People didn't leave. And so for days, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days, there'd be gift giving and speech making and food eating and wine drinking. And there's one thing you better make sure you did at this wedding. You kept everybody's plate full of food, and you kept everybody's glass or cup full of wine, because if the food or the wine ran out, it was considered a tremendous insult. As a matter of fact, it was worse than an insult. Are you ready for this? Hospitality at a wedding was considered such a sacred social duty that if the host or the hostess of that wedding ran out of wine or ran out of food, they could be sued for breach of hospitality. Some things never change, right? You could be sued for breach of hospitality. That's right. So you could be sued. So that's why Mary makes this 911 call. Now, what I wish I almost started to skip this, but I just can't do it because I feel like you need an explanation. I can't leave out how Jesus responded. Verse 4. Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Now, guys, I always get a kick out of that. Only Jesus could get away with telling his mom that. Right? I mean, mom says, hey, we've run out of wine. And what does Jesus say? Woman, why are you bothering me? My hour has not yet come. I mean, are you kidding? Hey, men, try that at home. And you're sitting there, you're watching ESPN, and you're really, I mean, you're 2 minutes to go and the game is locked up, and your wife says to you, honey, would you mind taking out the garbage, or would you mind helping me with the dishes? Try this one on. Why don't you just say, honey, like Jesus said, woman, why are you bothering me with this? My time has not yet come. See how that works out for you and shoot me an email, okay? Just kind of try that one on. Well, let me just kind of explain to you men and you women before you get hot under the collar what Jesus was doing. Actually, in Bible days, woman, the term for woman was not disrespectful. It was kind of like lady, like saying lady today. And what Jesus was saying to his mom, if you understand the bigger picture, it wasn't that Jesus was being a smart aleck. It wasn't that he was being disrespectful to his mother, because she had done the right thing. She had turned to Jesus about the problem. She had said something to Jesus about the problem. What he was saying was, Mom, you just need to understand, it's not yet time for me to reveal who I am. I'm not yet ready for everybody to start realizing that I am the Messiah, that I really am the Son of God. But she turns to Jesus with the problem. She talks to Jesus about the problem. And let me tell you why. This is so sweet. The reason why Mary could do that is because she knew something about her son that I want you to learn this morning. She knew something about Jesus. I want you to get that into your heart. And I don't want you to ever forget to the day you draw your last breath what I'm about to tell you about Jesus. The reason why Mary could go to Jesus with a simple request like this is because of this. She knew what matters to me matters to Jesus. I want you to hear me. If it matters to you, it matters to him. If it's a concern to you, it's a concern to him. If you care about it, he cares about it. Why did Jesus do this as his first miracle? That's a good question. Why did he? Did he do it to impress this crowd? No, because you're going to see in just a moment, they didn't even know what happened. Did he do it to, because he had to? No. Wasn't his reputation on the line. He wasn't going to get sued. Well, did he do it to prove he was the Son of God? No. That's why he did not want to do it, because he didn't want anybody yet to know he was the Son of God. You're sitting there saying, well, okay, why did he do it? Well, when you read the miracle, there's only one reason you can find why he did it. Because he cared. Because what mattered to his mother married to him. What his mother cared about, he cared about. What she was concerned about, he was concerned about. And he's wanted to do it to show that our problems are his possibilities. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your cares upon him because he cares for you. To know that I get to go to a God every day that not only cares about me, he cares about my cares. Son, if you care about it, I care about it. If it's on your radar screen, it's on my radar screen. If it's on your list, it's on my list. If it bothers you, it bothers me. That's why you can bring everything to God, because he cares. So, you got a problem. You're at the end of your rope. You're running on empty. What do? You turn to Jesus with your problem. And then you talk to Jesus about your problem. And this is so simple. And then you just trust Jesus to handle the problem. Now, watch what happens. The next thing that Mary does is the most important part of this whole miracle, okay? Because there's one thing that you and I have to do when the marriage is empty. There's one thing you and I have to do when you are running on empty. There's one thing you and I have to do when the bank account is empty. There's something you have to do when the gauge on the tank of your heart is reading empty. You have to do whatever Jesus tells you to do. Listen to what Mary says to the servants in verse 5. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now in my Bible, that phrase, do whatever he tells you, is highlighted in yellow, it's underscored in red, it's circled in black, and I've got a bunch of little stars all around it. You say, all it says is, do whatever he tells you. Why is that so important to you? Because what you just read is the greatest advice ever given in the Bible. What you just read is the greatest advice ever given in the history of this planet. What you just read is the greatest advice any pastor will ever give you from any platform. I don't know what problem you're facing. I don't know what crisis you're in. I don't know how much rope you've got left at the end of your life. But I want to tell you, if you want to get out of it and get out of it the way you need to get out of it, it's real simple. You do whatever He tells you to do. There are marriages in this room right now just about gone. They're hanging by a thread. Your marriages would be transformed if you husbands would start doing what you know Jesus wants you to do, and you wives would start doing what you know Jesus wants you to do. There's some of you in this room right now, your finances are a federal disaster area. And you could begin to turn your finances around if you would just simply start doing what Jesus would tell you to do. Your children would be happier if they would just start doing what Jesus tells them to do. Have you ever wondered this? Ever wondered why there's so many people out there who claim to know Jesus and claim to love Jesus and claim to follow Jesus, and yet they're not happy and they're not full of joy? And on the outside, they just like people out there who don't believe in Jesus and who don't follow Jesus. I mean, you ever wondered why all these people who claim to be followers of Jesus and they say Jesus has changed their life, and yet you watch how they live and they got the same frustrations, they're in the same depression, they got the same anxiety as people who don't believe and do not follow? You ever wondered why that is? I'm going to give you my theory, and I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but I will tell you, I really believe after pastoring as long as I have, the number one reason why you can't tell much difference between the average follower of Jesus and the average person who does not follow Jesus is real simple. It's because the average person who claims to be a follower of Jesus are not doing what Jesus tells them to do. And they wonder why. Well, why had my Christianity kicked in like I thought it would? Because see, here's where most of us have a problem. We know what Jesus wants us to do. We just don't do it. Jesus went on to say several chapters over in John 13, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. Jesus said, look, knowing what to do, knowing what I want you to do, that won't make you happy. It's when you do what you know I want you to do, that will make you happy. Now let's see how this works. Verse 6. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Let me stop right there. These were jars, when it says used for purification, there were special jars set aside, and all they were used for were to wash dirty hands and dirty feet and dirty faces. That's all. So you'd fill up the water, and people would come and they'd wash, and then when the water got real dirty, you emptied it and you started all over. They didn't clean the jars out, just put water in it. So you can imagine how stale and how putrid that water might be, even if you just put fresh water in. That's what those jars were used for. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now, draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first. And when people have drunk freely, now the meaning's pretty simple. You drink enough wine, you get a little bit on the other side, and then, man, you can serve Coke and they won't know the difference, right? He says, but you've done something, I've never seen this in my life. You have saved the best wine until now. Now watch this. This is where this really gets good. I'm going to tell you something that you didn't notice. I promise you didn't notice. Now, that makes me feel good because that makes me feel useful because I can tell you something you didn't notice, right? Did you notice that the water was not turned into wine until the jugs were filled completely to the brim the way Jesus demanded? Now, you may be sitting there and you may be saying, oh, well, I'm glad you saw that, but what's the big deal? Because we have it backwards. Most of us in this room have thought all of our lives, obedience follows blessing. Instead, blessing follows obedience. Now, let me just give you some practical examples, and then you'll say, then the light will come on. When I get my bills paid, when I get completely out of debt, when I've got margin in my money, then I'll start giving to God's work. You got it backwards. Blessing follows obedience. Obedience doesn't follow blessing. Or here's another one. You know, when I get my problem straightened out and I get my act together, then I'll start really getting regular in church and I'll really get involved in church. You got it backwards. Blessing follows obedience. Obedience doesn't follow blessing. If they had filled those jugs up halfway, it would have just been dirty water. You got to do exactly what He tells you to do. And see, when you obey God and you do what God tells you to do, then and only then you can expect God to come through. Now look what Jesus does. You didn't get this part either. This was pretty big. They fill the water to the brim, and then Jesus says to one of the servants, all right, I want you to take a cup out of that and go take it to the host and let him taste it. Now, if I'd been one of those servants, I know what I'd have said to Jesus, why don't you do it? Because if that water had been dirty, stale water, they could have gone to prison. That was a felony. It would have been an insult to that host to take that dirty water. And they did not know the water had been turned into wine, right? They didn't know that. So they take the cup out, they take it to the host, and the host drinks it, and voila, he's drinking wine. Now, had those servants, and I really believe this, a lot of people ask, when do you really believe the water was turned into wine? Can I tell you when I believe it was turned into wine? The moment the master of ceremonies took the first drink. That's when it was turned into wine. Because, and listen, don't miss this. Jesus will not do what you need Him to do for you until you do what He wants you to do for Him. Jesus will not do what you need Him to do for you until you do what He wants you to do for Him. What does Jesus do? Those jugs held 25 gallons of water. That's equivalent to 2,500 glasses of wine. They not only had more wine than they needed for the party. When the party was over, they had wine left over. See, our problems are God's possibilities. And here's what I have preached this for 35 years and people still won't believe me. All I can do is just keep showing you the Bible and keep showing you the miracles, and then you just got to believe whether you believe it or not. I've told it time and time again. When I offer what I need to God, God will provide more than I need. When I offer what I have, God will provide more than I need. In other words, put simply, you can't outgive God. I've said that 1,000 times, but you can't. When I offer God what I have, God will provide more than I need. Now we know why Jesus performed this simple miracle first. It's real simple. Okay, I get it now. If Jesus can take ordinary well water in a heartbeat, change its molecular structure just like that and turn it into wine, so wonderful that the best connoisseur in that building of wine said, this is the best wine I've ever tasted in my life. Then what do you think He can do for you? What problem do you think you've got He can't solve? What crisis do you think you face He can't handle? What situation are you in you don't think He can get control of? So, again, the miracle's simple. It's not complicated. And it does look somewhat like marriage, but here is the question. Do you really believe that Jesus can take the water of your problems and turn it into His possibilities? Do you really believe, really believe that He can change your marriage? Do you really believe He can change your heart? You really believe He can change your job? You really believe He can change your financial circumstances? I don't believe it. I know it. He proved it 2,000 years ago by turning water into wine. He proved it today, turning hearts of people that didn't know Jesus from water or wine into followers of His. So one last thing, and then we're finished. The miracle would have never happened had there not been for one little detail you may have missed, and it's in verse 2. Jesus also was invited to the wedding. See, the best thing that happened to that bride and groom that day they got married, the best thing that happened to them was not that they got married. The best thing that happened to them was they invited Jesus to the wedding. That's the best thing that happened. And you know what? When you make a decision that you want to invite Jesus to your wedding, when you make a decision that you want to invite Jesus into your heart, when you make a decision you want to invite Jesus into your marriage, when you make the decision you want to invite Jesus into your financial circumstances, when you make the decision you want to invite Jesus into your home, when you make the decision you want to invite Jesus into your job, you'll learn He can take all of your problems and turn them into His possibilities.
It's easy to think that God has better ways to spend His time than to listen to my problems. But that's just not true. He wants to hear from us. He cares about what we care about, and He is the solution to our problems. Call Touching Lives at 800-413-1131 today. Let us pray with you as you share your concerns with Him.
Building on the insights of his best-selling book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt has written a brand new devotional to bring renewal to all who want more of Jesus. A great companion devotional, or perfect on its own. Spend time with the one who changed everything. Get your copy of 52 Weeks with Jesus devotional from Touching Lives for $13, or get both books for just $20. Call 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org.
The enemy loves nothing more than to convince a person that Jesus doesn't care. But that's just not true. Jesus taught that the Good Shepherd left the 99 to go after the one, and He wants every person who will listen to hear this message of love. Because of your faithful prayers and generosity, Touching Lives continues to share this message of hope.